Good evening, everyone. In these first minutes, we'll share the secret teachings. So anyone who comes a minute late will miss them. Just kidding. Perhaps everyone could just be aware of the pictures popping up on the screen. Just notice, comprehend what you're seeing, but then notice just the fact of seeing. And for those of you who are here, I'd like to invite you to unmute and say good evening to each other. Good evening.
Good evening, everyone.
Hi, everybody. Hi, everybody.
Hello.
Hi, everybody.
Miss you.
Glad you're here. Your voices are like a balm to the heart, but so are your images, so thank you. So please, back to muting, if you don't mind. And tonight, I want you to consider as we sit together, the sense of resting your weary mind. It's an amazing thing that you have arrived here. Everything that you did, perhaps in your whole life, that brought you to this moment is finished. It's of the past. And everything that is to come in our life is in the realm of the unborn or the realm of dreams. So it hasn't happened. What you do know is you've arrived here in the only reality. It took a lot of life to get here. But now that you're here, it's okay to relax. Okay to let yourself sink into the experience of living. The experience of living, not the idea of living. Experience of living is very direct, very non-historical, non-conceptual. So notice what it's like when you let yourself experience this moment without concepts, without words. And just sensing what is most obvious about this experience of immediacy. Hopefully you will immediately be struck by the fact that you are aware. And that awareness is nature. It's not particularly personal. So just be aware, naturally aware. And using the words of using the words of Dogen, meditation is not a means of enlightenment. It is enlightenment itself. So consider this time, this immediacy, this settling into the living present as fruition. as an expression of your awake nature, enlightened activity. And in this way, don't consider it a means to an end. Don't consider it another reason to postpone enlightenment, awakening. Just let yourself be awakening itself. And if there's any doing, it's just to intend to not stray away from this vital point of being awake. You could say that awakened activity is anything that supports you to be, to continue to be aware. So you want to feel, hopefully you will feel free to use any skillful means that support you in being here. I will in particular anchor my attention in this physical body, knowing that without this physical body, there is no Buddha. In other words, there's no awakening. And I also want to notice that when this attention, awareness is connected to the body, there is a feeling of harmonizing. I want to feel that harmony that comes from mind and body coming together. This will help me stay here. I also want to experience any other sensations that come. The gentle movements of the breath, I want them to all be welcomed, used in the service of remaining in the awakened state. I want the moods to remind me of my love of being awake right here. I want the thoughts and images that are known to be the reminder that this is awakening. I want to give up any notion that there are any conditions for awakening. We are all awakening itself, as Dogen says. A few internal triggers or prompts, something like be aware, stay aware, keep the puppy on the paper, be the sky-like nature of your own mind, be free. At any point that you may become aware that you had been dreaming, daydreaming, lost in thought, celebrate the return to the awakened state. Don't judge the fact that the conditioned mind has sent you on a little imaginary journey. Keep celebrating this awakening. Just this moment, just this awareness, just this body, just this breath, or anything else that displays itself within the vast expanse of our mind's nature. Be free. Rest your weary mind in this natural, great peace and awareness. Just being aware. A mind that is aware is soft, yet alert. The attention is gentle, yet precise. Intimately feeling the texture of the presently arising experience. Body, breath, moods, thoughts, sounds, everything welcome in this impartial, unmoving nature of awareness. In the last minutes of the sitting, mingle your body with this loving awareness, this completely welcoming presence that you are, so that your body is experienced as completely welcomed, completely accepted. Pleasant experiences, unpleasant experiences, experiences that are neither pleasant or unpleasant, all welcomed. This great, receptive, impartial awareness. Bathed in equanimity. And feel the vastness, the limitlessness of this aware presence. And let all beings, all circumstances, all bodies, let all beings be received by this balanced, loving awareness. Giving the blessing of non-contentiousness, of caring to all beings everywhere. Let no one or thing be left out of this field of awareness. Rest in this natural great peace. As always, a great pleasure to sit with all of you. Although not ideal, this online experience, it is what we have, and so I'm deeply grateful for being able to be together, practice the Dharma, remember what we need to remember. And also, thank you for showing up so that I have the opportunity to remember. Tonight we have Howie G as my co-pilot. And he's hiding behind that beautiful mountainscape, but he will be helping to take care of you this evening. And part of that will be to help me with the few minutes that we have for questions, comments, descriptions. And so I'd like to invite you, if anybody has any comments or questions about your practice this evening, about the instructions, anything about the teachings, anything that's bubbling, that's emerging from your mysterious consciousness, please feel free. Gift everyone with your question or comment. And Howie, do you know how to do I keep forgetting are you with me, Howie?
Yes, I'm right here, Howie.
And about putting the raised hand and all that?
Well, I can remind folks that if you want to be recognized, one way is to raise your hand, and not literally, but there's a way to do it on this Zoom. If you're using a computer, it's probably on the bottom of your screen. On mine, it's way over to the right, and there, it's called reactions, and then there's a little thing that says raise hand. Sometimes you might find it under something called participants, and then, or maybe more, M-O-R-E, with some dots. But give a shout, unmute yourself if you're totally in trouble, or just literally raise your hand and we'll see you. I see Howie just raised his hand.
So, are there any questions, comments? Now, if you are immersed in your awakened state and have been rendered quiet and without any mental activity, marvelous. But if not, feel free.
Howie, sometimes around this time we kind of take a little second to stretch, and oftentimes we'll put a little something in the box to remind folks about Donna. Maybe people will think of things during that time.
Okay, we'll just let it drop for just a few. We'll just let it be quiet for a moment. This is often the best part of the meditation, while we're sensing if something bubbles up. And then after that, we'll take a few minutes for stretching.
This is
Okay, y'all.
Nancy. I'm raising my hand.
Oh, thank you, Nancy. Breaking the ice.
Well,
Let me just do something here. Sorry.
can you hear me
Yes,
okay?
I can hear you. I can see you.
Okay, terrific. So I've been practicing a lot during this time, and I guess you can say I've been cheating on you as I took another program that was a wonderful 21-day morning short sit. And during this sit, it was a lot more guided. And that used to bother me. I used to be like, shut up, I'm trying to be quiet, with too much guidance. But in actuality, I found it to be very interesting and opened up new things for me. But I was curious about, some of them were sort of yoga breathing with the nostrils, and some of it was taking 4-part breath where you're breathing in and then holding and then breathing out and counting in 4s, and it was all very wonderful. And I'm just wondering, is that a different kind of practice? Is that useful? Is it? I was just wondering your thoughts on that sort of meditation sit.
Every meditation, there are countless kinds of meditation. This is essentially meditation that's associated with the Buddha's teaching. So it's all pointing to the awakening of your Buddha nature, your capacity to be awake. And in this tradition, most of the instruction is meant to just strip away any kind of embellishment of experience so that you really meet your experience very freshly and see it for what it is. And through seeing things as they are, your heart opens, you understand more, just less confusion. So that's the general direction. There are many traditions, though, that have as part of them other skillful means that prepare the mind and body for this kind of simplicity of meditation. And so that includes all the different yoga practices that were originally were designed to prepare people to be able to sit and see clearly. So what you described, and the reason I said yoga is because what you described seemed like yogic breathing and those kinds of practices are wonderful, and they affect your nervous system. They help balance things out.
Mm-hmm.
Generally, at least in this tradition of practice, the balancing comes through just letting the body find its own natural breath. And we don't really, in our tradition, the one other difference is the breath is not really used as a breathing exercise. It's used as just an anchor for attention and as a source of insight. So you actually see how the breath breathes itself, how some breaths are short, some long, some deep, some shallow, and you make no effort to alter it. Unless, of course, you feel as though you need to draw an intentional breath, but otherwise you leave it alone.
Okay.
So that would be a little different, but they're all wonderful, skillful means, and used with the right intention can be really helpful.
Okay. Terrific. Thank you.
The most important thing is you got a lot out of it.
Howie, I see Laura Cannon's got her hand up.
I think I saw Terry's pop up before Laura, so please feel free, Terry, and I'll go to you, Laura, next. Terry, feel free. You have to unmute first and then speak.
Hi.
Thank you.
I've been experiencing a lot of angst about the climate crisis and just being full of despair. But I had a really, really good experience in this meditation, because for the first time, I just was repeating, I'm energy having an experience of Terry. And I'd say for the first time, I really felt I could actually disengage a bit from the Terry. And maybe that's what I've fought for years about, no self. I've never understood it and I've never liked it, but maybe that was a tiny taste of it.
Great. Whatever
Made me feel more.
it sounds genuine, and it sounds like there was a little space in the mind and not quite as identified. I think you make a really good point. I think it's really natural for the heart to break in the face of the climate catastrophe and the devolving climate. And what really exacerbates that is the personalizing of it. And so if to whatever degree that the identity view takes a little vacation in those moments of simple awareness, some of that, it doesn't change the climate, but it eases our reaction to it. So thank you for naming it in that context too.
Thank you.
Thank you. Happy for you. Laura, please.
Thank you, Howie. My question is around spiritual bypassing. Tonight, right before the sit, I had a really intense and somewhat triggering emotional conversation with someone. And I came to sit down for the practice, and I was listening to your instructions. And I was really just tapping into the body, and there was awareness of, where the anger, where I could feel it in my body. But very quickly, I'm able to tap into the empty aspect of it also, and really kind of fall into that vastness that's around that. And pretty immediately, the sensations shift into a loosening and an opening. And sometimes it happens so quickly, and I had been so intensely triggered that I guess I'm just wondering if perhaps it's some form of spiritual bypassing. And if you could just comment on that at all.
Yes, thanks for the question. I love it, and I loved your description. Just for those who don't know this expression called spiritual bypassing, it's the simplest way that I can say it is that it's the overlooking or bypassing of strong emotional experiences, and in a sense hiding out in a state of mind that that avoids having to deal with those more sticky kinds of experiences. What tells me that what you experienced was not spiritual bypassing is that you weren't in any way trying to get away from that triggering experience. You were creating an openness to experience that if that was there. And what happened when the grasping and identification with that experience loosened by just being aware, the stickiness of whatever that was did not stick around. And you actually, at least from my perspective, you experienced the true nature of even a triggering experience. It has a momentary nature. It comes and it goes. And I'm thumbing through this quote that I've been sharing over and over again lately, because a conscious not doing anything and just letting it be is central to the practice. You weren't trying to push it away. You weren't trying to suppress it. You weren't trying to make something else happen. You were just being aware. And I'm going to find this quote and then share it. It's from Padmasambhava. Here it is. And in this case, he uses the mental state of agitation, but you could interchange whatever those feelings were that you were having. He said, agitation due to circumstances occurs because of an external incident. You follow a thought and your mind becomes agitated and scatters into a disturbing emotion. When that happens, he says, keep the attitude as there's nothing to do here. You don't have to do anything. Just train in loving kindness and compassion, disenchantment, and keep the view of being aware. It doesn't mean to hide out in awareness. It doesn't mean to push something away. It just means open. You see that was the nature of that experience. If there is something to be learned or explored, it will come back to visit. And so just doesn't sound like spiritual bypassing to me.
Thank you so much. Super
Yeah.
helpful.
People who spiritual bypass are busy being empty. You seem like you were just describing a human experience of getting triggered, and then it faded. So thank you for that description and the question.
Thank you so much.
It is a good thing for people to ask, am I hiding out in meditative states? Am I meditating to get away from things? Or am I meditating to open to my life? So thank you. So Howie, this may be the time that you were mentioning before. A time to stretch, a time to perhaps look at the chat. Let's see. No, nothing in the chat in particular. Oh, here comes the information in the chat for Donna, and thank you so much in advance for your generosity. That makes it possible for us to keep meeting, and really is in some ways, the currency, no pun intended, currency of the Dharma is the generosity of your presence, the generosity of your support. And it is, for those of you who haven't been around the teaching so much, generosity is considered one of the 3 pillars of the Dharma. First one being generosity, the second one being the practice of virtue, of non-harming. And the third one is the training of your mind in meditation. So dana, sila, bhavana. So thanks for your generosity in advance, and feel free to stretch very mindfully. Try not to lose the thread of this aware presence. And then in a few minutes, we'll come back and have a few stray thoughts. Thank you. I will hit the gong in just a few minutes. the quote from Padmasambhava about disturbing emotions came to me when I was looking for a famous quote attributed to Padmasambhava, who's considered by many the founder of Tibetan Buddhism, author of the Tibetan Book of the Dead, Tibetan Book of the Great Liberation. But I was looking for a particular quote that floats through my consciousness a lot, I wanted to get it accurate, but I couldn't find it. But it's essentially, my mind is as vast as a clear, empty sky, but my care for the effects of actions or karma is as refined as barley flour. And I've always loved this because it captures the two wings of the teachings, the wing of wisdom, which says that we are empty, nothing that can be named, insubstantial. We are indescribable. In a sense, we are nothing. On one hand. On the other hand, we are everything, with all of our triggers, all of our pain, all of our diversity, all of our poisons, greed, hatred, ignorance, and this beautiful world of forms, and the pain of our climate situation, etc. And this teaching asks us to have our mind be limitless, liberated, but our heart be responsive and compassionate and meticulous in our care for our actions and how we may impact this world, and how our grasping and our greed impacts this world, how our hatred and ill will impacts this world, and how our delusion impacts this world, our confusion and ignorance. And hopefully this inspires us to refine our practice, to be diligent, thorough, not treat our practice as just a hobby or a break from a tough week, but something that pervades our life. And yet with the vastness, we don't do anything. We stay awake, like tonight. Practice or meditation is not a means of enlightenment, it's enlightenment itself. So it has these two sides, as the teacher Nisargadatta says. He said, love tells me I'm everything. Wisdom tells me I'm nothing. And between these two, my life flows. Or Kala Rinpoche from the Tibetan tradition says, you live in illusion and the appearance of things, all the things. There is a reality. You are that reality. And when you understand this, you'll see that you're nothing. But being nothing, you're everything. That's all. So this flow between form and emptiness, wisdom and compassion runs all through the teachings. So the reason I was thinking about this today is because recently I'm doing my first Tuesday night in 4 months in my home office. I was away because we had some great challenges in our household about my daughter and online school, and we went away, and now we're back. But on our travels to come home, we saw that in many communities, I don't know if I can get through this in 20 minutes, but in many communities, it was such a beautiful thing. There were commonly murals of George Floyd with the caption, "I can't breathe." And it's showing up everywhere now. And it reminded me of this, hopefully, this reawakening to the pain of racism and oppression and marginalization and inequality. And we've seen it in so many different ways with the distribution of the virus. There's just so much that people are paying more attention to now about the differentness of our different experiences in this world. Things that people who do feel marginalized, oppressed, unrecognized, harmed, experience every day of their lives. But for many people, that this has been a beautiful and necessary and painful awakening to the experience of someone like George Floyd. And across our entire culture, including the culture of the Dharma, there has been a very strong commitment that has emerged for diversity and equity and inclusion, to create a safe and welcoming space for anyone, acknowledging that so many spaces have been unsafe, exclusive, and the Dharma being one of those places that has been over the years, not out of any ill will or intention, but out of ignorance, out of a shroud of obliviousness, a lack of care for the for karma, for actions, a lack of sensitivity to realizing the tremendous impact of our actions, of institutional racism, and just across the board. I don't want to just single that out. And this is really, in some ways, the heart of the Dharma, is this care for our actions of body, speech, and mind with each other. The conditions that we create both socially and inwardly. And one of the fruits of this particular reawakening, has been a greater sense of freedom, I think, for people who have felt less welcomed, less seen, oppressed, to have safe spaces, to be welcomed more, to honor their uniqueness and be honored for their uniqueness, and to have diversity celebrated in this world and in this country. That's the aim, that's the intention. And it has its problems. The whole massive movement of diversity, equity, and inclusion. And Spirit Rock has certainly gone through a lot of growing pains around this awakening. And many will say this is not really part of the Dharma. The Dharma is about just awakening to the Buddha nature, that we're getting caught in social engineering. Social justice is really a different matter. But I just want to say that the way we are expressing, our world is expressing this need for social justice, is by trying to see each other and see our uniqueness. And the Buddha also, in his own way, tried to do the same thing. In the teachings, I think of the Metta Sutta, in the teachings of the Metta Sutta, the Buddha was telling us to expand our circle of affection, to not put anyone out of our heart, to treat everyone as if they were a child, a mother's only child, to treat every human being, to not have anybody be left out of your field of awareness or your field of love, and not wish ill upon anyone. So the teachings and the practices were continually pointing to waking up out of our shrouds of ignorance and privilege and separation and othering, and keep expanding our heart so that there's no one who you feel is apart from you. This is at the heart of the teaching of non-separateness. But the Buddha also did some other radical things, social justice oriented things that maybe are a little bit different than celebrating our differences and our unique identities and magnifying our identities associated with different groups or races or religions or orientations. Rather than celebrate the uniqueness, what the Buddha did when people entered the monastic life, his way of melting away what creates a lot of separation, melts away the tendency of mind to, which is a fetter of the mind, that the tendency to put ourselves above others, to put ourselves below others, and to have those identities become very entrenched, that create at least in the time of the Buddha, the conditions of the caste system, the hierarchy of the Brahmins who had privilege and wealth, and the so-called untouchables. What the Buddha did was anyone who entered the Sangha completely dropped their identities. They dropped these very entrenched identities. They all wore the same robes. They all kept the same training rules. They all ate the same food or went out on alms runs. People who were privileged left their privilege at the door. People who had been treated as less than were elevated to show their common humanity. So if we just elevate and magnify our differences, see our differences, that's one part of the teaching. But the other part of the teaching is to see our common humanity, is to see that all of us, every human being, shares the common human experience of sickness, of aging, of death, of loss, of frustration, of the desire to be happy, the desire to be free of suffering. And seeing our common humanity also has the impact of melting away the sense, the tendency to other people, to create separation. So whether or not so in our world right now, we're going heavy on the celebration of diversity. And it is really just, it's a necessity for our life. But our practice also, in addition, the two sides of the wings, wisdom and compassion. Wisdom asks us to look deeply into the common elements of every being's life. And that is whatever arises, passes away. Whatever arises and passes away cannot be clung to as me or mine. And ultimately, we have to let go of every identity, even those social identities that so need to be acknowledged so that our world can function in a much less harmful way. So that every being can realize that their mind is as vast as the sky, and so that our heart expresses itself as caring for the effects of our actions, can become as refined as barley flour. So may we all realize that we're empty, and may we all realize that we're full of each other, and there is no one who is better than anyone else, no one who is less than anyone else. And yet we must acknowledge that our conditioned world has become excessively stratified and separated. And there has been great harm caused. And so we commit ourselves to ending that harm and realizing the full breadth of the Dharma, if we can, in this very life. So thanks for listening. I'm working it out as I go along. So thanks for allowing me to do that. Thanks for your generosity. And I think we'll end there by considering, even though I kind of included that in the end of the words, a wish for all of us to awaken and for all beings to awaken. Just add to that the wish very specifically about tonight and the consideration that there might have been some usefulness for us being together, that we maybe planted a few seeds of wholesome karma, some blessings, some meritorious actions, and that we wish together that those actions are beneficial to not just ourselves, but to all beings everywhere, and that we dedicate our practice today and every day to the welfare and benefit of all. So thanks for your practice. May all beings be liberated. So please feel free to say goodnight to each other, put each other to bed, so to speak.
Good night.